Hey folks, Fernando doing another video for The More Survivalist, and today I'd like to talk a little bit about what it's like to talk about preparedness to non-preppers, people that are not into survival and preparedness. I just did this morning an interview for Talk Radio Europe with Bill Padley, and it was very interesting. Very nice guy, very friendly, very experienced in terms of radio, but of course not a person that is into preparedness, which is strange for me because I've done a lot of these things, lots of these interviews and talking with folks, but it's mostly folks that are interested in survival and preparedness. If not, I did a couple of interviews for the BBC, but it was mostly talking about the economic collapse of Argentina, how that goes down in the country, how that's like from someone going through it, someone living through it, mostly the economic aspect. So they're interested in that sort of thing, how prices go up, how inflation changes things, how ATMs run out of cash, that sort of thing, how stores no longer accept cash, and you have these signs saying cash no longer accept credit cards, and you have these signs that say just cash only. So all of these things are very interesting for people that like analyzing economic downturns and different financial scenarios, but we're not talking specifically about preparedness. When I talk about preparedness, it's usually with folks in the community, so I should put it some way. So this was one of those times in which, talking with someone that's really not into any of this, and it was very refreshing because this is how most ordinary people see us, and you have to be very careful with the way you express yourself, with words you use, not to come across too gung-ho. In some cases, this person is a person that hasn't got as much immersion in terms of firearms, knives, and all this stuff. And once you're used to all of this, it's just no big deal. I have maybe a couple dozen knives all around me because of different reviews, things. These are all over the place for me, and that's just the way it is. But for people like that, during the interview, he asked, "Do you have a knife right now?" And yeah, I have a couple actually. I have a multi-tool and a folder, and you have to explain to people that, especially in UK, the laws are very strict in terms of blades, of knives. In UK, if you have anything that is it's a locking blade or a fixed blade, any kind of fixed blade, doesn't matter if it's a bayonet fixed blade or if it's a tiny multi-tool. A multi-tool like this, carrying it in London, it can land you in jail directly because it is a blade that locks. It's a tiny blade, at least for me, it's a tiny blade. Sure, a very respectable little multi-tool, very budget-friendly and all, but in the eyes of the law, in those places, this lands you directly in jail, especially now that they even harden the laws further. So yeah, and people that are brought up in that environment, even if I had like pepper spray, which is, for example, where I live right now, it's perfectly legal. You buy it at any store for 18 bucks. You buy your pepper spray, you carry it in your pocket all day long, no big deal. Blades under 10 centimeters, perfectly legal, of course. It's also always within a context. There's one of the things you learn from living in different countries, traveling different places, and especially in my case, I like to know the law. I like to know what is legal and what's not, so as to, as a law-abiding citizen, go with what I can handle, go with what it's within what's permitted. So if it's, for example, you can carry a knife that is under 10 centimeters of blade, okay, perfect. But the law says that under certain circumstances, for example, in a bar, in a concert, yeah, sure, you're not going to be getting away with that. If you have a blade with you in a concert, 2 a.m., cops have a little bit of room there to make a decision on, yes, this is not appropriate. But there's always the difference of something that's strictly illegal. For example, in UK, the law that has been updated recently is very strict in terms of there's no way you can justify anything that is anything other than a non-locking, folding pen knife under 3-inch blade. Anything that's different from that, you get busted. You have pepper spray, you get busted as well. So knowing the law, that is extremely important. Now, again, for people that are not used to that, you have a knife with, yeah, I have actually a couple. And I was explaining, a multi-tool, something that you use all the time. I mean, I use it all the time. I honestly don't understand how people go about their day without a multi-tool. And for example, if I'm home relaxing and I have sweatpants, whatever, and I don't have anything with me, even though I have stuff all over the house all day long, as you clearly see, because I'm looking into it, doing reviews. I'm back from the range, shooting, I'm cleaning guns, I'm looking into stuff. This is basically what I do. So I always have anything that cuts, anything flashlight related, it's going to be nearby all the time. But even then, all of a sudden I need to open the water meter, so I have to check something. I'm looking for pliers, and if I don't have it in my pocket, I'm just, damn, I wish I had it with me. So yes, this is a multi-tool for me. It's crucial. I do not understand how someone lives without this in their pocket all day long. My wave is just like a third arm for me. I can just do not conceive going about my day. And Bill asked me, what do you use an iPhone? Well, an example, I use it for 10,000 different things throughout the day, especially if you're going to be cutting stuff, opening boxes and such. But I was in a mall a few months ago, and I told you guys about this. I think I wrote it in my website. There was, we were in a mall, and I was with my wife. Right in front of us, there was this kid, maybe 15-year-old kid with his mother. And all of a sudden, his shoelace got stuck in the escalator. The mother tried to pull the kid out. She just could not get it to come out from the escalator. As it went on, she was smart enough to stop it with the emergency button, but she was freaking out because she just couldn't get her son's foot out of the thing. And I had a folding, I don't remember, I think I used my Leatherman or a folder of some kind. I just cut it like, in a second. And the woman looked at me as if I was freaking Harry Potter with a magic wand, because people do not expect you to have tools with you, and this is what these things are. So it's not about anything magical. Same thing when lights go out all of a sudden for whatever reason, and you have a flashlight, you just pull it out of your pocket, and how do you know this is what's going to be happening? Well, it's not that you know it's going to be happening. It's after many years, after decades of understanding these things, you kind of get a feeling of the tools that are important and that you're likely to end up needing. This is, of course, always within the context of each one of us. For people that live in different places, needs may be completely different. Pretty much anyone anywhere needs a pocket knife, a folder, a multi-tool, and a flashlight. Those are basics of EDC carry, and there's good reasons why. They're just freaking useful all the time. And yes, of course, for people, it's something else that we were talking about with Bill in terms of concealed carry. We were talking about my book, my latest book, Street Survival Skills, where I go into detail on how to use firearms for self-defense, how to use knives for self-defense, and I was explaining to him that I cater to a wide audience in general, from different countries, different backgrounds, and again, legalities, the law is different in each of these places, and what people can have with them, even culturally, the cultural aspect of, yes, this is perfectly normal in some places, maybe not so normal in others. I just have to address all of those. So yes, if someone can have a concealed carry gun with him, by all means, absolutely. I think it's a great idea to have it with you. And that's what I would do as well, where and when legal to do so. And you address that and you talk about how you use that for self-defense. Now, for someone that doesn't even have a pocket knife with him throughout the day, a gun seems extremely excessive and outrageous. But you have to understand that is simply the way the world is. People have different opinions, different views, and you have to respect those as well. Even if you may not agree completely with someone, usually one of the things I found out is that people in general, 99% of the stuff people usually agree with. 95% of stuff most people agree with, and it's usually small details or smaller things that folks have a different opinion. Of course, this is very much related in terms of liberty and freedom. For me, I think that if you're not even, not being legally allowed to have a gun with you at all times, it kind of sucks. Not being allowed to legally have with you a pocket knife, man, yes, that definitely sucks. Not being legally allowed to have pepper spray with you, that is kind of like a deal breaker for me. That's very far off in terms of, man, you cannot even have pepper spray, a food ingredient so as to spray in someone's face if he's attacking you. A woman, typical thing for a woman to defend against a rapist is the pepper spray. It's a classic, and it fits that role perfectly well. You don't have to go around stabbing people. Pepper spray is a fantastic non-lethal self-defense tool. Very effective. Most police officers know this. So maybe on those things we can kind of disagree with. And then one of the other things that struck me was that we cannot always assume that everyone has had our same life experience. I've been shooting from a very early age. I'm not a great shot, that's no mystery, but I've been involved with firearms for a very long time, especially for self-defense. I took my first defensive shooting course, and by course I mean a 3-month course. I think it was like 3 times a week, very thorough, when I was 15 years old. I was very lucky in that regard. And how I ended up doing that? Well, in driving school, where I lived in Córdoba, in Argentina, back in the day, many years ago, when I was driving, when my father took me to school every day, we went by a shooting range that just had opened. And I was very interested in that, even though in my family there wasn't anything of a shooting tradition. Sure, my dad had a couple of guns, but back in the day when it was normal for pretty much anyone to have a gun or two in the house, but he was not a shooter. He was the typical gun owner. Even today, the typical gun owner is a person that has a gun, maybe used it a couple times, doesn't ever shoot it after that. Years go by and you're just not that into it. They just have it because it's tradition to have for defending the household, even though they have no freaking clue of how to use it for defending the household. But back in the day, very typical, every man had a gun in his house back in the day. Today, not so common. But well, I would see this place when going to school, and I ended up finally getting my parents to take me there for a visit, see a little bit about the place. And the guys, it was very funny because these were 2 former military guys. One was a major, I think he was retired, and classical story. The guy's dream was, after retiring, opening a shooting club, a gun range. And the thing is, there was really no one there. I was the only person in the club, and it must have been a huge failure, but very lucky for me, I got one classes and instruction from someone that had a lot of experience with firearms. And this goes back in the day when we're talking early late 90s maybe. So yeah, mid 90s, I should put it some way. So that kind of tactics, that kind of gun handling, a lot of Weaver sense, right? But at the end of the day, it's been many years that I've been involved in this. So when you come across someone that has no experience whatsoever with firearms, they kind of freak out. They just do not know a lot of stuff about it, and you have to be understanding of that. Bill was asking me about what I thought about teachers with guns in America, and of course it was presented like kind of a question like, of course you think that's crazy, right? And my opinion in that topic is, I've expressed it in the channel before, is that, well, I think it's, you have to take it in each individual case. There's already school principals that have a gun in school in many places in America. I think that you have to understand the culture of the country, and also it has to be a decision on a local level, because as most of you guys know, given that this channel is 90-something% viewers from the United States, there's some counties or some states in which half the people are veterans. And if I have a school and I have a teacher or a principal or someone working in that school that has a lot of experience handling firearms, maybe a veteran that knows how to use a gun very well, maybe someone that had additional training in special forces, or someone that had a certain amount of more advanced training. If that guy is in my school working as a teacher and I need to provide security for my students because there's a possibility of something like that going down, well, why wouldn't I want to have that guy with a concealed carry firearm? Wouldn't be the end of the world. It actually would be a very level-headed, reasonable thing to do. If I have, of course, I'm not going to be giving a gun to my 80-year-old physics teacher that never touched a gun in her life. She's not going to be doing anything good with that. I mean, you don't have that training for it. I know that there's cases in which police had been training and giving classes, or giving additional training for teachers that wanted to have a gun with them in class. In parts, I believe it went down like that. But it has to be taken in each individial case, and it may well be the case that you have the right guy may be capable of defending himself and defending his students if such an unfortunate event ends up happening. So I don't see anything wrong with that. But for people that are not into this, they think it's a terrible idea. One of the things you come across a lot is people that think that police officers are, if all of them are all firearms experts to a degree that it's bordering on complete fantasy, John Wick, Matrix type of thing. People think that every single police officer has received an amount of firearms training that goes even beyond what guys in special forces sometimes get. It's not realistic. Most police officers in every country that I know of have somewhat of a limited exposure to firearms. It's not as if every single police officer is a firearms expert. It's simply not the case. That's simply not true. You have some police departments that are better about it, that are more rigid in terms of their required shooting and the scores and the amount of training that officers should be going through. But to think that every single police officer is a firearms expert to the level of someone that even competes once a month, it just doesn't work that way. Most police officers will not be going to a range and practicing and training once a week. Simply just not the way it is. Training is expensive, ammunition is expensive, and a lot of police officers simply are not that into firearms. They just do not really care a whole big deal about it. Many guys, of course, do. Many guys are gun nuts and they love the shooting aspect of their profession, and they will go into it a lot. But this idea that a normal person that is not a police officer cannot learn how to use a firearm properly, that is typical of people that really don't know a lot about this stuff. And the same goes for a pile of other things regarding preparedness in general. We have to be more understanding of other people's lack of knowledge regarding a lot of these things. If we close ourselves into not being tolerable of folks that may think different. One of the interesting things we're talking about is how you do preparedness without becoming paranoid, without becoming a crazy person. And I believe that's actually a good point, because many guys in our community are quite extreme and quite paranoid about it. And the way at least I go about it is, I don't let any of this all has to add. This all has to make my life better, not worse. If I'm sad, depressed, angry, if I'm miserable, if I have a crappy family life because of preparedness, then I'm definitely doing it wrong. And so should you. You should think about it in the same way. Are you enjoying it? Are you having fun? Are you liking it? Fun is often underestimated. Fun, man, being happy is what this is all about. If you're not happy with your life sucks to begin with. So you prepare to live, but to live good lives. If you are not living a good life, then what's the point in surviving? So enjoying it, having good fun, spending time with your family, that is all very valuable. And if this is the thing you do in terms of preparedness, it works against that, then it's really not, you're not doing it right. It has to be something that you enjoy while doing it, that it improves your position in life, and it improves your position in case of emergencies and disasters, if they ever should happen. Some of these things are pretty much unavoidable facts of life, as we often talk about. You're going to be getting older, you're going to be having stuff happen in your life, employment-wise, job-wise, family-wise even. These are all things that just end up happening. And of course, there's a series of little emergencies, disasters that life throws in our direction every once in a while. That's what preparedness is about. And it's also about, for many of us, it's also about preparing for some of the more wider, more complex stuff as well. We're talking here about things like bugging out, and the stuff we've covered about relocating when serious events go down, political aspects, stuff of, for example, what's happening right now in Argentina with the Kirchner coming back and doing some crazy, outrageous stuff. As of right now, they're increasing taxes like 30%. The dollar is going through the roof. The peso is devaluating again. They're putting lots of retentions to the agricultural sector. So it's falling apart, and this is part of preparedness as well, knowing what's happening around you and your surroundings to a broader extent as well. So guys, just that a little bit of information regarding how to get along with people that have maybe a very different opinion, that are not preppers, survivalists, just not into these things, but perfectly capable of having adult conversations and exchanging ideas and maybe learning a thing or two along the way. See you in our next video. Have an awesome day.